Hello and welcome to your first maths lesson of the week. As always, please do your arithmetic over the course of the week, making sure that you are getting really fluent in those tasks. Quick look at what we are doing this week. So we are on the last lessons of this topic. So in lesson 11, which is today's lesson, the first lesson of the week, we are going to be looking at how to find the percentage of a number when that number is not 100. We are going to learn a few different reasons why, and then I'm also going to teach you a few short tricks in order to find percentages really easily. Tomorrow, in the next lesson, lesson 2 of the week, you are going to be practicing everything you've learned about percentages and again learning how to get really quick and efficient at them. In your third lesson of the week, we are going to go back and revise fractions. In lesson 4, we are going to go back and revise percentages. And lesson 5 of the week, but lesson 15 of the unit is going to be your assessment. So really only 2 new bits of learning this week, 2 lessons of revision, and then your assessment. This lesson then, all about finding percentages of a number. Let's start by reminding ourselves how to find the fraction of a number. Let's have a look first at finding 1/4 of 20. Now, when I'm finding 1/4 of something, I'm splitting that thing into 4 equal parts, and I want one of those equal parts. That's what a fraction is. So let's do that with this first question. I've got 20. I'm splitting it into 4 equal parts, so I'm dividing it by 4, divide by the denominator. And then I want one of those parts, so I'm going to multiply by the numerator. So, a reminder when finding fractions of amounts, I take the whole number, which was 20, I divide by the denominator, and I multiply that answer by the numerator. When the fraction has the numerator of 1, we don't really need to do that last step. Look, we can see the answers are the same. But let me show you why we always want to follow those steps by doing this question. This time we're going to find 2/5 of 15. So my step-by-step guide, I take the whole number and I divide by the denominator, because that's how many equal parts I've split 15 into. And 15 I'm splitting into 5 equal parts. Each of those equal parts is worth 3. Now, I don't just want one of those equal parts. My fraction tells me I want 2 of those equal parts. So I'm getting that 3, and I need to multiply it by 2. Give me 6. So step 1, divide by the denominator. Step 2, multiply by the numerator. Let's have a look at this question. So I'm finding 3/10 of 20. Step 1, divide the whole number by the denominator. Step 2, multiply that answer by the numerator. Feel free to pause now and refamiliarize yourself with these star words. Okay, we know already that percent means out of 100. So, for example, 50% means 50 out of 100. However, in life, things aren't always evenly split into even groups of 100. We could be talking about a group with many more or many fewer things than 100. We use percentages to tell us which proportion of the group we are talking about. What amount of the whole set is what I mean by that. So, percentages are a way for us to visualize what amount of the whole set we are talking about, just like fractions do. Let's have a look at percentages of 100. What percentage can you represent with this bead string? Okay, let's have a look at the top one. There are 100 beads on the bead string. So what is 1% of that 100 beads? Well done. if you obviously remember, that is one bead. If I have 100 of something, and I'm finding a percentage of it, so I was finding 20% of it, my answer is just 20. If I'm finding 40% of 100, the answer is 40. 6% of 100 is 6, and so on and so on and so on. Because obviously percent means out of 100, so I'm finding 1 out of the 100 beads. So let's take 1/4 of these beads, like I have here. 1/4, how many beads have I got there? Well, they're divided into groups of 10, so I've got 10, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 25 out of the 100 beads, 25%, 25 out of 100. The same as if I was finding a fifth. Let's take one of the groups here. I can see that there's 20 beads, 20 out of the 100, 20%. Different ways of saying the same thing. That's why they have the equal sign between them, because they are all equal to each other. However, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we are finding percentages of numbers greater than 100 or less than 100. Here is how we do it. Let's have a look at this problem. There are 200 people in a section of a stadium. 10% of them are supporting China. How many people is that? Okay, so if I just had just this section, there are 100 people there. If I wanted to find 10% of them, I would just take 10 of them, wouldn't I? So 10% of 100 is 10 people. But I don't have 100. I actually have twice that many. So if I look at my set as a whole, my set of 200 people, 10% is this many. Because I need to take 10% of the whole set rather than just one set. So what is 10% of 200 going to be? How many people have I circled there? Of course, it's 20. So 10% of 200 is 20 people. Let's have another look. Same 200 people in this section of the stadium. This time I want to find 50% of them. So there are a couple of ways I could do this. The first way is to say, okay, well, there's 50% of that set, which is 50 people. And here's 50% of that set, because of 50 out of the 100. So really what I'm doing is I'm doing 50, add 50 out of the 200. So it's 100 people. If I counted all of these people that I'd highlighted, I would work out that that is 100 people. However, there might be another quicker way that we could do that. If we think back to last week, we might remember that 50%, I'm hoping that we remember, is the same as a half. Would it be much easier if the question said, half of the people are holding a camera? What is half of 200? Again, the answer is 100. Different ways of working out the same thing. In questions, have a look at the percentage and try and remember if it is one of those common percentages that we learnt about last week. Okay, for these questions, the ones that I'm highlighting now, these are ones which are common fraction equivalents. 25% is equal to a quarter, 50% is equal to a half, 10% is equal to a tenth, and 75% is equal to 3/4. For these questions, please try and work out what that percentage of 500 is. There are two ways you can do it. Let's do one together. Let's do 50% together. So if I wanted to find 50% of 100, I know that 50% is equal to a half. So what I'm really doing is finding half of 100. What is half of 100? Well, it's 50. I know that because it's 100 divided by 2. 50 plus 50 equals 100. Now, that works when I am using a common fraction percentage equivalent. But what about one where I'm not? Let's take 60%, for example. In order to find 60% of something, or really any percentage of something, I can follow 2 steps. Step 1 is I divide the whole amount, which is 500, by 100. That will tell me what 1% of the beads is. What is 500 divided by 100? Well, it's 5. So 1% of 500 is 5. So if I know what 1% is, I find what 60% is by taking that number, 5, and the second step is multiply by the percentage. So I take my whole number. If I was finding 60% of 500, I do 500, step 1, 500 divided by 100 is 5. Step 2, multiply it by the percentage. 5 times 60 is 300. You can pause now and have a go at a couple of those if you feel like you need some practice. Okay, let's move on to your independent task. Challenge 1 is all about recognizing those common fraction percentage equivalents. I've written them out for you here. 50% is equal to a half. Look, that is going to be useful information for the first question. What I'm trying to find is half of 12. 25% is equal to a quarter. What I'm trying to do is find a quarter of 16, and so on and so on. Please refer back to these slides. You will even see in the doc this week, I've written, please refer to slide 11 for help. Slide 11 on your copy of the Google Slides. I would recommend you pause the video now and complete challenge 1 using the information on this slide. Okay, welcome back, or if you haven't paused, thank you for continuing. Let's have a look at challenge 2. For challenge 2, we are finding the percentage of amounts when the amount is a multiple of 100. So we need to follow this step-by-step guide. Step 1, divide the number by 100. Step 2, multiply the answer by the percentage. So let's have a look at one together. I might be asked to find 5% of 300. Now, step 1, I take the number 300 and divide it by 100. 300 divided by 100 is 3. Then I take that answer and multiply by the percentage. Look, step 2. 3 multiplied by 5, my percentage from the question, is 15. Therefore, 5% of 300 is equal to 15. Let's have another look at that again. I might want to find 8% of 600. Step 1, divide the number by 100. So I'm doing 600 divided by 100 which is 6. Step 2, multiply that number by the percentage. 6 times 8 is equal to 48. Therefore, 8% of 600 is equal to 48. Please use the information on this slide to help you with challenge 2. Challenge 2, follow that step by step. Take the number, the whole number, divide it by 100, multiply by the percentage. Step 1, divide by 100. Step 2, multiply by the percentage. Challenge 3 is you can pause there and get going. If you are struggling or have struggled up to that point, I would encourage you to just go back and watch the video and the slides up to now before you have a look at challenge 3. Challenge 3 is an optional challenge, but you can do it if you would like to. This is a way of proving that we can follow this step-by-step guide to find a percentage of anything. Step 1, divide the number in the question by 100, and step 2, multiply that answer by the percentage in the question. So for these questions, you can use a calculator to prove that these are the answers. So if I was asked to find 23% of 124, I take the number and divide it by 100, which is 1.24. You can see I've moved everything to place value to the right. That's how I divide by 100. I then get the answer, 1.24, multiply it by the percentage in the question, and that will give me the answer, 28.52. The reason that I've said you can use a calculator for these is because, of course, I'm not expecting you to be able to do this step 2. I'm not expecting you to be able to do 1.24 multiplied by 23. The idea of this task is just to get you used to doing this step by step. Step 1, divide the number by 100. Step 2, multiply by the percentage. That is your optional challenge 3. And like I said, you can use a calculator. So over to you, off you go.